Ever wonder how your own personal mindset, I mean, literally what's going on in your head right now, could actually scale up to impact the entire planet? Well, today in this explainer, we're taking a pretty fascinating journey. We're going to map out the direct path from our own internal psychology all the way out to global and even ecological harmony. It's like a giant puzzle where you are the absolute center point for a massive, world-changing ripple effect. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We're going to use a concentric circles framework, starting at the foundation of harmony, moving into the family, expanding out to an undivided human society, scaling up to the universal human order, and finally, looking at enriching the orders of nature.
Section 1. The foundation of harmony, the first ripple in the pond. Let's look at that very first building block.
So, human living is fundamentally structured across these four expanding levels. And here's the catch. You absolutely cannot skip a step. Harmony isn't something you can just force from the top down, right? It has to grow organically. It starts with the individual at the core, ripples out to the family, then expands to society, and finally reaches nature and existence as a whole.
So, what's that very first pebble we're dropping in the pond? It's what's called right understanding. Think of this as fixing the broken cog of the individual, because right understanding in individuals is the absolute basis for harmony in the family, which in turn is the fundamental building block for harmony in society. Without the ability to just see reality and our own self-organization clearly, our desires just keep shifting everywhere. We stay disturbed, and we create disharmony with literally everyone and everything around us.
Moving to Section 2, Harmony in the Family, scaling up to the second circle. Once that individual cog is fixed, we naturally step into this next circle.
Here is the real game changer. Right understanding plus relationship equals mutual fulfillment. Listen, we can't just manufacture good relationships out of thin air, can we? But when a person brings genuine clarity to their naturally existing family ties, it pretty much guarantees mutual fulfillment. You evaluate yourself, you evaluate the other person, and you're operating on this rock-solid foundation of trust and respect.
Now, a huge part of family harmony relies on how we view our resources, and we've got to make a sharp distinction here between mere wealth and true prosperity. Wealth? Well, wealth is just a blind accumulation of physical stuff, and honestly, it never really feels like enough. Prosperity, on the other hand, requires that right understanding we just talked about. It means accurately figuring out what your family actually needs and then producing just more than that requirement. It's a feeling of true abundance, not just an endless, exhausting treadmill of accumulation.
Section 3. An undivided human society, from the living room to the world stage. So how does all this translate globally?
Well, there's a very specific organizational pipeline for this. We don't just magically jump from one harmonious home to a global government. That would be crazy. Instead, society logically scales up. A family connects with a family cluster, which forms a village, which networks into a village cluster, ultimately weaving together into a world family. It's a completely natural, step-by-step progression of harmony.
And the ultimate goal of this pipeline is an undivided society, or Akhanda Samaja. So what is that exactly? An undivided society is achieved when the feeling of love and justice actually expands beyond our immediate relatives to all of humanity. It happens the moment we stop dividing people up based on physical attributes like age, race, or sex, or by their wealth, or their specific belief systems. When we finally see the underlying similarity in our basic human aspirations for happiness, we literally start to feel related to every single human being on Earth.
Let's see how this all builds into the comprehensive human goal, because the connections here are just beautiful. It starts with right understanding in every individual. That directly leads to prosperity in every family. And when families are prosperous and get it right, it generates fearlessness, basically massive mutual trust, in society. Finally, when society operates without fear or exploitation, it paves the way for true coexistence in nature. You pull out any one of these blocks and the whole tower falls.
Section 4. The universal human order, encompassing all of existence. Now we're zooming out to the true macro level.
This brings us to the universal human order. Now, I know that sounds like a super heavy philosophical concept, but it's actually incredibly simple. True order requires us to feel connected not just to other humans, but to every single unit in existence. It's about realizing our individual freedom in the grand context of the universe, deeply rooted in respect for both mankind and nature. This is how we truly cement that world family.
To quote directly here, the universal human order is a feeling of being related to every unit, including human beings and other entities of nature. That undivided society we just talked about, that is the absolutely essential stepping stone. Once we establish a world family that is totally free of human-to-human prejudice, expanding that empathy out to the rest of the natural world
just happens naturally.
Which brings us to Section 5, Enriching Orders of Nature, Fixing the Broken Cog. Time to look at our actual ecological footprint.
Take a really close look at the relationship between the material, plant, and animal orders here. You see those arrows? The soil nourishes the plants feed the animals enrich the soil. It's a closed loop. They are all mutually fulfilling each other in a perfect cyclic, self-regulating balance. Nature already has this whole harmony thing completely figured out.
But then there's this. This brilliantly illustrates our current problem. When you add the human order into the mix, suddenly there are big question marks on our outgoing arrows. Right now, humanity is the only order failing to provide mutual fulfillment to the rest of the system. We take the soil, the plants, the animals, but instead of enriching them in return, we usually just deplete, pollute, and destroy. We're kind of the broken cog in nature's incredible machine.
So how do we fix it? We have to drastically change how we produce things. We need to shift away from our current destructive habits of exploiting and depleting and move toward what's called enriching production. Enriching production activities are literally designed to mimic nature's own cyclic processes. By using that right understanding we started with, we can actually design our science and technology to help these natural cycles along rather than tearing them apart.
To put this into perspective, let's look at two totally concrete examples of how production can be truly enriching to all the orders of nature. First up, utilizing renewable energy sources like solar and wind power. This lets us harness massive amounts of energy without depleting the material order. No fossil fuels required. Second, developing eco-subsystems, like using companion planting in agriculture or setting up forest gardens. This way, we actively nurture the plant and animal orders while still securing our own food. We can literally engineer our systems to give back way more than they take.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to bring it all the way back to the very center of those concentric circles. Back to you. Building a world family starts with the individual. So I've got to ask, what is one right understanding you can apply today to enrich your circle? Think about it. Seriously, take a second and think about it, because that is exactly where the next big ripple begins. Thanks so much for hanging out and learning with us today.